Hey and welcome to the Leniverse. I am Leni and I am here to talk about August reading. I don't really do monthly TBRs, I am more about the reading events. I have my Easter crime, I have my spooky month, I have Big Book Summer, and I have the 2 month or so reading marathon that is the Women's Prize for Fiction and Non-Fiction. And for August, I have 2 reading events that are diametrically opposite, but perfectly complementary. Imagine you are attending a 6 to 8 week long banquet. Every single day you are either partaking of rich foods with heavy sauces, or experimental minimalist dishes made out of foam and seaweed. No matter how impressive this food is, how tasty, after a while you are likely to start craving the simplicity of a plate of nachos, or some greasy fish and chips, maybe a messy kebab, a slice of pizza without any weird toppings. Conversely, if all you eat is fast food, day in and day out, eventually you're going to long for a solid home-cooked meal or a fresh salad. And August is the literary equivalent of this. On the one hand, we have the Bukke, known for books that can be demanding, experimental, brilliant, memorable, potentially a bit exhausting. On the other hand, you have Garbology, which celebrates literature that is unashamedly trashy. These are books that do not aspire to teach you anything, broaden your horizons, or challenge you in any way other than maybe your disbelief. They are just purely there to entertain you. Now, the Bukke, I am sure, needs no introduction, but Garb August is an annual month-long celebration of literary and movie trash. It was created and is hosted by booktuber Ollie from the channel Criminally, where he talks about crime, pulp, horror, that sort of thing. Possibly not in that order. Apologies if I mangled your slogan there, Ollie. This event has a bingo board that can be used for both books and movies. And it has a weekly thematic schedule. There's also a Discord channel for people to exchange tips on trashy books to fit the different prompts. Now, I am probably not going to try to do the bingo, and I probably won't stick to the weekly prompts either. But I am looking forward to some trashy reads. I'm going to save those for later in the video, for last, because if this is the first time you have visited my channel, odds are that you saw the word Bukke and that's why you clicked on the video. And if you are a return viewer, then you're probably used to my videos where I talk about the Women's Prize. Scandalous trash is probably not what you hear from. There's only one trashy book that I want to talk to you about first. It's a shameless plug. I wish I had a paperback to hold up, but that hasn't arrived yet. So here's just an image of the awesome cover. The book is called Garbology, as presented by Criminally. And the reason why I'm plugging this book is twofold. One, my partner David has a story in this anthology. It is a humorous take on life in the later stages of the zombie apocalypse. We follow a survivor as he goes about his day. He is clearly up to something, he has some sort of plan, but what is it? I'm a little bit tempted to say that this is I Am Legend meets Shaun of the Dead, but that would probably give you false expectations. So I won't say that. But it's not just zombie stories in this book. There's plenty of action-adventure, there's monsters galore. I think there might even be some spice. But I don't know if it's meant to be attractive spice or gross spice. I'm not making any promises either way. The other reason why I am promoting this book is that it is for a good cause. Nobody is getting paid for this book, except, I guess, Amazon. I don't think you can avoid that. But the writers have all donated the short stories. There are artists who have donated artwork. The editor and publisher have donated their time. And once costs are covered, any proceeds will go towards literacy programs in the US and in the UK. So you can support literacy while having fun with some trashy stories. If the book-along list wears you out, gives you a headache, has your head spinning as you try to figure out what's going on, take a break and join the apocalypse. I'll post what is hopefully a universal link to the book in the description box. I think the paperback is only available in the US and the UK. I might be wrong about that. But the ebook should be available across every Amazon platform. And it is very nicely priced. All right then, on to the book before I then come back with some really trashy reads at the end. I have been saying all year that I am not going to even attempt reading the entire book-along list. For two reasons. One, I do that with the Women's Prize for Fiction, and this year I also tried to add in some non-fiction, and it is great fun, but quite exhausting. I just can't go through that twice a year. And the other reason is that last year especially, the bookie just didn't appeal to me that much. The bookie last year and the international bookie this year has all just felt a bit meh. I still ended up reading about half the list last year, like 7 or 8 books. And they were basically all right, but there was nothing there that rocked my world. And just the thought of reading 13 books like that, especially over the course of 6 weeks? No, that's for the short list, so 2 months then? It exhausts me just thinking about it. But the book girls actually made it a bit easier for me this year. First of all, they've given me a list that looks instantly appealing. Although I must say that I miss seeing a Nigerian book on the list. Isn't that an unwritten rule by now? It's probably written into the statutes that they have to have Irish literature. But I thought they had to have a Nigerian one as well, unless replaced by a book from Ghana. Closest we get this year is a British Libyan author who was born in America. Not sure that counts, Booker. But at any rate, it looks like they have found 13 very interesting books. One of the ways that they have made it a bit easier for me with this list is that they have long-listed a book that isn't even out yet. Actually, 2 books that aren't even out yet, but one of them won't be published until about 2 weeks after they announce the shortlist. What's up with that? The point of having a long list and then a wait and then a shortlist and then another wait and then you announce the winner must be that you want to generate hype around the books, right? You want people to read them, discuss them, select their favorites. You want the buzz, the hype, the discussion. We can't discuss the books unless they are published. So I really genuinely wonder why they do that. Why don't they just have their eligibility dates be, the cutoff point being the end of July? Or even the end of August would be okay, because that still gives you a couple of weeks before the shortlist. But the end of September? I don't get it. Now, the book that won't be published until it's basically too late is Playground by Richard Powers. I am probably the only person on the literary fiction corner of BookTube that has never read a Richard Powers book. not even the overstory. I only have the vaguest notion of what that's about. But I do think that Playground looks quite interesting. It's like a mystery eco-thriller kind of thing on an isolated island, something like that. Haven't looked too deeply into it yet, but it did look interesting. So I kind of hope that it will be shortlisted because it gives me more of an impetus to read it once it's published. Although I must say my library already has a copy on order, and I have already placed a hold, so I guess I will read it. But the speed with which my library acquires books, it might very well be December before that happens. So in that way, I kind of hope it isn't shortlisted, because then I won't feel the urge to read it before the winner is announced. The other book that hasn't been published yet is Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner, which is another author that I haven't read before. No, I haven't even read The Mouse Room, which was either longlisted or shortlisted for a previous book. That one will be out in early September, so whether or not to read that is a problem for next month's Leni, not August Leni. So that's 2 books down. And then it turns out that for the first time ever, I've actually read 2 books in advance of the long list. Those books are James by Percival Everett and Orbital by Samantha Harvey. And I quite liked both of those books, which is one of the reasons why I'm a bit excited for this year's long list. James, I think, doesn't need any introduction here. If you haven't read it yet, then... But I definitely recommend reading it. Even without having read any of the other books, I feel fairly certain that it will be shortlisted. And if it isn't at least a finalist on next year's Pulitzer Prize for fiction, then I will be appalled. And the reason why I think it will go far is not just because it is a really good book, but because it invites so much discussion. It's not just in dialogue with Mark Twain and with his classic, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. It's in dialogue with the reader, especially if you read the first book, because he fixes practically everything that I didn't like about Huckleberry Finn, about Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. I'm quite fond of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, or at least Huck Finn himself, but I absolutely loathe the ending. And Percival Everett makes some brilliant changes, but he also does a couple of things that I don't agree with, that I don't like. And I read them and I immediately wanted to discuss them with others to find out how they felt about it, and to try to examine and sort out my thoughts and my feelings about why I didn't like these particular twists that he made. It's a great book to read, to think about, to discuss. And this was not meant to be a review video, so I'll just move on from there. The other book, Orbital by Samantha Harvey, I don't really think will be shortlisted. Not because it isn't a good book, but it's not a book that I think will have the same wide appeal. It has virtually no plot, and a lot of people have said that they found it, overwritten, pretentious. I don't agree with them. I found that it was a book that took a surprisingly long time to read because it is virtually plotless and it's very dense. It's all contemplation and some vivid descriptions crystallizing into clear ideas and insights. It is not a book that I feel the need to discuss with anyone, but it is a book that I have thought about quite often in the months since I read it. It's a book that I might read again because I do appreciate a well-crafted paragraph and just the sort of meditative feel to the book. Unless the word meditative scare you away, I am not a fan of self-help books or Paul Coelho or anything like that. I am a fan of quiet, thoughtful books. Okay, so that's 4 books dealt with for now, and 9 to go. And the booker has kindly long-listed some books that were already on my TBR. And that's excellent news. The one I look forward to the most, for instance, is My Friends by Hisham Matal. It won the Orwell Prize for political fiction earlier this year, and so it's been on my radar for a while. That said, I still haven't read last year's winner of the Orwell Prize, The New Life. I have it. I just haven't gotten around to reading it yet. So the book kindly long-listing this year's winner helps me. It's double up, and I'm much more likely to get to it. Unfortunately, I don't have that one. I have had a hold on it at the library for quite some time. If I'm lucky, I'll get it towards the end of the month, but it might be September. One book I do have is Wandering Stars by Tommy Orange. Now, the downside here is that I haven't read his first book, There, although I do have that one too. I think I got them both at about the same time. So I have been meaning to read them. From what I've heard, Wandering Star is either a prequel or a sequel, or I guess set in a longer time span than There, and that you really need to read that one before reading Wandering. I almost had Wandering Souls, that's a different book that I have read. Yeah. Wandering Stars. So that puts me at 2 books for 1. Less ideal. But at least I have them, so I should probably start there. Also already on my TBR is a Headshot by Rita Bullwinkle, which I admit was not a book that I was initially drawn to, because just like a book about boxing, not really something I'm into. But this is a blame it on BookTube kind of scenario. I've just seen people speak highly of the book, and that made me interested. Fortunately, because that meant that I had a hold on that before the longlist was announced. And that book should be available to me in the next few days. Also on my TBR is Wild Houses by Colin Barrett. That one just sounds entertainingly weird. A teenage girl out to rescue her boyfriend, called Dull, from the clutches of drug dealers who have holed up in the house of some innocent bystander or old man. Seems a slightly odd choice for the bookie, so I'm sure there's some sort of interesting twist or something about the writing style. That one will probably take me a while to get, so I don't think that will be in August. Another book that should be available to me soon is Stone Yard Devotional by Charlotte Wood. I don't actually know anything about that book, except that it is by an Australian writer and it is not praiseworthy. So, what could the bookie committee possibly have found of more interest than praiseworthy? That's what I would like to know. Those are likely to be the only ones that I can get to in August, or at least get hold of. Yes, I mean, I could go out and buy the books, but I try to avoid doing that, in part because it really adds up, and in part because my bookshelves are already full to overflowing and I have stacks of books everywhere. And I really hate getting rid of books once I have them, so unhauling books again is just not a thing that happens very often. So I have to be just a bit careful with what I buy, what I bring into the house instead, using the library if possible. And yeah, I could get them on Kindle, but on the one hand, I'm not that fond in spending my money on Amazon instead of proper bookshops. And on the other hand, my Kindle is the cemetery of forgotten books. It's where books go to never be read because I forget about them. Obviously, when I'm reading to a list like this, I wouldn't forget about them. hopefully. I still have at least one book from last year's book list unread on there, I think. But basically, that means I'll be reading 2 books by Tommy Orange. I will be reading Headshot and Stoneyard Devotional 4. And I think because I am really keen on My Friends and Wild Houses, I think that when I get through those 4 books, and if the library hasn't actually coughed up any of the other books, I might just reward myself with a trip to the bookstore to buy one of those, depending on which one looks to be the closest to get to me from the library. I mean, obviously I'm reading more than those 4 books in the month of August. I still have my big book summer and random other library books. I have plenty to read, but I definitely try to get through those books from the book list. And actually looking at the whole long list, I'm kind of interested in all of them, except maybe This Strange Eventful History by Claire Massaud. I watched Roro from Roro Reads do a review of that book, and it completely killed all desire I had to read it. But we'll see. I guess if it gets shortlisted, then maybe. If it wins, then definitely. Although last year I read Prophet Song only because it won, and I hated every moment of it. Don't come at me for that, okay? It just didn't work for me. I didn't like the style, I didn't like the character, I didn't like the narration, I didn't like the audiobook narrator. I just, nothing about it. Didn't like the ending. Okay, not going further into that. If any of the other long-listed books should happen to drop into my lap, then I probably will read them as soon as I can. Otherwise, that's for September's video. And that brings us back to the trashy books. I took a little trip into one of the many charity shops I have just down the street. Can't remember which one it was, but I found some real trashy treasures. First up, I have Flanagan's Run by Tom McNabb, who I think maybe wrote the screenplay for Chariots of Fire. Oh no. British Olympic coach and technical advisor to the award-winning film Chariots of Fire. And this is a book set, I think, during the Depression, where someone who may or may not be a confidence artist has this idea of a foot race going from LA to New York, covering 50 miles a day, every day, with prize money for the winners, should any survive, of $300,000. And weirdly, the novel is described as wonderful and heartwarming, which is not really my thing, but it's also supposed to be thrilling. So we'll give that a try. And then, to up the trash level a bit, I have Cry Wolf by Wilbur Smith. This is an author that I might have read before in my teens, I'm not sure. I have this image of having seen them in my dad's bookshelf, maybe. Some of them. The blurb on the back here is wild. It is the winter 1935. The Wolf of Rome, the army of Italy, threatens to annihilate the almost defenseless Ethiopian people. Jake Barton, a tough, hard-punching engineer from Texas, and Garrett Swales, a stylish old Etonian gunrunner down on his luck, strike a lucrative arms deal with an Ethiopian prince. Now, old Ethonian gunrunner, I can picture that. Seeing that as the hero of the story, though, that's a stretch. We've kind of had it with old Ethonians in this country now, I think. We've had too many of them in government. Their task is to smash the international blockade on land and sea and deliver a consignment of ancient weapons to his desperate countrymen. With them must travel the beautiful and fiery Vicky, a young American who has pledged her life to the Ethiopian cause. Oh, great. white savior. Thrown together by fate and the onset of war, the adventurers can find no escape from a violent confrontation with death among the high mountains. Now, my younger teen is a bit of a history buff, so when I read him this blurb, he kind of perked up at like 1935 and Ethiopia, and he likes war stories. And then I read him the rest of it, and he was so disgusted. And he said, kind of a bit hopefully, like, is this satire? And I just, no, it's just an adventure story. I'm sorry. Oh, I think I really sank in his estimation. We'll see if I can manage to get through this or if it's just too much. And then, perhaps the trashiest of all that I picked for the local interest, The Magus of Hay by Phil Rickman. And this is set in Hay-on-Wye, which is a lovely, lovely book town on the Wales and England border. Like literally on the border. I think the river that runs through there is like the actual border. I went there for my 40th birthday to look through all the, like, it's a tiny town and it has like, it's basically comprised of just bookshops. So yeah, I went there for my 40th birthday with the goal of buying 40 books. I think I got to 32 or 33 before we realized that we wouldn't be able to carry them all home. And also there were some books that I was looking for that I couldn't find, so I ended up just ordering them online instead. That was a wonderful weekend. But anyway, listen to this. Hay-on-Wye, an eccentric medieval town known for its dozens of second-hand bookshops and for having its own king. I did not know that. Now in the grip of recession, Hay is fighting for its future. Not the best time to open a bookshop, but Robin and Betty are desperate, and only Betty worries about the oppressive atmosphere of the shop they're renting. Surely you can never have too many bookshops in Hay. Merrily Watkins, diocesan exorcist for nearby Hereford, knows little about Hay until a body is found in the dark pool below a waterfall on the outskirts of the town and the police ask her to assist. There's so much wrong with that sentence. Like, first of all, the church actually employing an exorcist, like the Protestant church, I presume. And that the police should ask her to assist because they found a body? But do they think that the body is possessed? No, I've heard stories about the police using psychics to help them out and all that, and I think that's mainly just a myth. I can see self-proclaimed psychics calling the police saying that, oh, I know where somebody is buried, whatever, and the police may be deciding that, hey, might as well check it out. But having them actually call in an exorcist? I can only assume that Merrily Watkins, in addition to her exorcism skills, might be an expert on waterfalls. I don't know. But as unbelievable as that is that she lives in Hereford, like just on the other side of the border. It's just around the corner from Hay. How can she know little about Hay? That's just daft. But anyway. The dead man's peculiar interests will open a passage to the hidden heart of Hay and a secret history of magic and ritual murder. And Merrily is alone and vulnerable as never before. It's a Merrily Watkins mystery, which means that there are more of these exorcism books. This is just fabulously, ridiculously trashy sounding. I look forward to it. Now, if you have watched until the end, thank you. And tell me, did you come for the bookies? Did you come for the trash? What are you reading in August? Are you reading the bookie? Are you reading literary garbage? Both? Neither. I'm going to say goodbye now and reopen the windows that I had to close because of traffic noise before I pass out from the lingering summer heatwave. Warm weather is so rare here that air condition or even ceiling fans are just not a thing. We just suffer with a, I don't know, stiff upper lip for a couple of weeks and then it's back to rain as normal. I think I'm gonna go sit outside with gin and tonic and maybe a cucumber sandwich and start reading. Trash or böcker? Trash, böcker. We'll see. Maybe I'll bring one of each. Enjoy your August, everyone.